Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes. It's the Skeptic Zone podcast, episode number 794 for the 24th of December, 2023. I don't know about you. It's Richard Saunders here, by the way, from Sydney, Australia. I don't know about you. We were growing up as kids. Of course, we were excited that Christmas was coming, but we always loved the 23rd of December because we used to say, oh, it's Christmas Eve. And I remember my mother saying, oh, yes, we used to say that when we were kids too. I wonder if you do, wherever you are listening around the world. Well, here in Australia, it's Christmas Eve. Although now I think about it, this show, when it's released very soon, in a couple of minutes, it will be Christmas Eve in the United States. So it all works somehow. Coming up on this week's show, I look over some of my skeptical archives collected over 20 years, snippets, photographs of signs from mind-body wallet festivals, things I've seen in the streets, flyers from alternative medicine, sort of a roundup, a random roundup of some of the flyers and information I've gathered over the last 20 years or so. And for me, it's a never-ending source of reference material. And these days, my entire skeptical collection, comprising of many thousands of videos and files and photographs and audio segments, fits onto one SD card. Isn't that amazing? Following that, a couple of weeks ago, Maynard took the opportunity to interview Melanie Treacic-King, who was in Australia. I think she still is, actually. She was a guest of the Victorian Skeptics at the Australian Skeptics National Convention, and she and Susan Gerbert came up to Sydney and spoke at Skeptics in the Pub. And Maynard, at the pub, interviews Melanie about, well, amongst other things, being in Facebook prison. I've never been in Facebook prison. I don't know about you. Then to round off the show, we go back to the Trove archives, and this week we're looking for references to miracle water. And if I look out the Skeptic Zone window, there's lots of miracle water hanging in the sky at the moment. I think we're in for a very wet Christmas. That was the forecast anyway, and for some strange reason, the cooler weather over the last few days has meant that the rainbow lorikeets that normally squawk and squawk and squawk outside the window, well, they've all squawked off. I wonder where they are. Maybe they're visiting you. I hope you're having a good festive season. I know my friends who are teachers at last have a break, at last have time to get themselves together before the new year. And if you are a teacher, if you, especially of younger kids, you might find the end of this episode very interesting. But now it's time for me to run downstairs, have a little bit of custard. It's a very Christmassy thing to have. While I do that, I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone. Now, as I mentioned at the top of the show, I've been collecting snippets and clippets and Trove segments and photographs from Mindbody Wallet and flyers and all sorts of things for well over 20 years. And normally, well, I used to just have them in a big pile. Then it occurred to me to photograph them, scan them. So I scanned them, photographed them, collected them, and they are, as I've discovered, an invaluable resource. Information about complementary medicine and clairvoyance and psychics and all sorts of things, anti-vaxxers going back many years. And they're great as a guide, really. We can see, we can learn from the past. And one of the things it teaches us is that we see many things come and go, things that promise a lot. The latest revolution in alternative medicine. This is this treatment, this is this new breakthrough in complementary health or whatever it is. And decades later, they're simply a lost memory. Well, not so lost because I do have the flyers or the information. But at the time, they were being sold as legitimate products. So I thought I would read some of these flyers and bits and pieces I've collected over the years, mostly at Mind Body Spirit festivals, Mind Body Wallet as we call it. Here's a flyer I picked up probably about 20 years ago. Welcome to a new era in quantum philosophy, an age where ancient healing meets modern science. The QXCI and the CSIO. Tomorrow's medicine today. Advanced technology for quantum health available now. Over the page it says, welcome to a new era in technology, an age where the focus is on prevention. As if that's a new idea. Is optimum health your priority? If so, think prevention. Introducing the latest energetic medicine device currently available. The QXCI-SCIO is an evoked potential biofeedback device used by qualified practitioners to evaluate underlying stressors in the body. Stress, if not addressed, can manifest destructively in the body. Prevention is better than cure. Imagine if you were told a computer could evaluate your body and correct any stressors that you have developed over the years. Imagine if your practitioner had the power to read your body through the use of sophisticated, computerized biofeedback mechanisms, then empower you to get your health back into balance. Does sound like word salad, doesn't it? What is the QXCI-SCIO? I might have got those letters mixed up before. Simply put, the QXCI-SCIO is a high-tech complementary health device which assists health practitioners to find energetic imbalances and health issues occurring within humans and animals. How does it work? The functions of the QXCI/SCIO are similar to those of a virus scan on a computer. They detect weaknesses such as viruses, nutritional deficiencies, allergies, abnormalities, and food sensitivities by calculating the biological reactivity and resonance in your body. This data offers an understanding of your possible needs, dysfunctions, and vulnerabilities, focusing on your energetic body, thus offering a more complete view of each facet of your health. Well, who knew? How does this comparison help? Basically, here we go again, QXCI-SCIO reveals anything that is negatively affecting health. For example, if someone has digestive trouble, the QXCI-SCIO may show that person to have some sort of food poisoning as a child, which is causing current health issues to occur. Or if a person is chronically tired, it could show an acupuncture energy imbalance. Throw in acupuncture, why not? Does QXCI identify problem areas? It's more than just an analysis tool. After measuring the body's frequencies, the QXCI/SCIO feeds back its own frequencies to redress or neutralize destructive wave patterns. Healing takes place through energetic intervention, giving the body the true healthy energy patterns which enhance wellness and facilitate recovery. Do children benefit from therapy? It is an exceptional tool for use with children because they're often unable to communicate verbally what is going on inside them. A session could unearth possibilities such as food intolerance and toxicities that could be the underlying issue surrounding learning disabilities. Quote, acting out, end quote, behaviors or simply health issues. How about animals? I could try it on the Skeptic's Own cats. Yes. Oh, what a surprise. Yes, pet owners have seen vast behavioral improvements and increased vitality in their pets following the QXCI/SCIO therapy. Enhanced the power of quantum technology. Analysis of nutritional deficiencies, allergies and food sensitivities, toxicities, fungi and parasites, brain wave patterns, emotional blockages, sports injuries, mental stress, physical body, organs, muscles, glands, blood, and more. And more. Therapies include electroacupuncture, biofeedback, spiral, dental, and TMJ. NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, nutritional balancing, beauty, anti-aging, stress reduction, homeopathic, Bach flower remedies, color and crystal therapy, iridology, chakra balancing, and biorhythms, hormones. Anecdotal evidence. Quote, the pain I felt in my head is now absent after the treatment with the QXCI. My brain felt totally askew, unbalanced. Before the treatment, I had felt myself separated in all aspects of my physical body, spirit and soul. Now I feel that they are coming together again. I am becoming more whole. I have more clarity, more joy, more life. I do not feel like I have chronic fatigue syndrome anymore. I have more energy too, and I am enjoying being a mum and loving daughter very much. End quote. Annabelle, 34 years. Quote, the QXCI machine has helped me greatly. It somehow has put me back in balance. I have been so terribly out of control! Exclamation mark. With the second treatment, I was asleep the whole time. And even though I did not feel so out of balance as I had before the first session, I did feel a change had taken place within myself. I felt different. I feel better about myself now. I feel more aware of myself and the people around me. End quote. Natalie, 17 years. Glowing endorsements there. All of this and more is available with the QXCI SCIO. What should I do next? Ask yourself one question. Do I want the best for my health? If you answered yes, call your local practitioner below and schedule an appointment today. And this was from Somewhere Called, which was looks to be like a stamp put on the bottom of this flyer. Alchemy of Joy, 2B Dural Street, Hornsby, New South Wales, 2077. Now, what, might you ask, is the QXCI and the SCIO making all these fantastic promises? And writing in the year 2008, Ben Goldacre, who is a distant relative of mine, some of you may know the name Ben Goldacre, he's based in the UK, has written about this in The Guardian. And he says, in part, silly season is in full swing. The Telegraph correspondent has gone for a biokinetic health audit. The resident homeopath, Katie Germain, quizzed me about my diet, stress levels, and lifestyle. She then strapped on a wristband and plugged me into an electronic device called the Quantum QXCI, which scanned my system for vitamin, minerals, food intolerances, toxicity, organ function, hormone balance, parasites, digestive disorders, and stress levels. Goes on to say, What is the mysterious QXCI machine? It appears to stand for Quantum Zeroid Consciousness Interface. The most advanced medical assessment and therapy device in the world today, according to the distributors. It loops all 200 trillion human cells within a 55-channel biofeedback system to gather bioenergetic data at nanosecond speeds. Needless to say, Ben Goldacre was not impressed. It is just one of the long lines of so-called biomachines or biofeedback machines or energy healing machines that have come and gone over the years. But for a time, and who knows if they're still lurking out there in the wild, these machines were being used by so-called practitioners, and all the information, luckily, I have kept in this flyer from the day, which would have been in the vicinity of 20 years ago. Similar machines are still being used, if not that one. And completely at random, just in the long list or the long catalogue here of clippings and things I've kept over the years, something from the Daily Telegraph from June the 25th, 2001, Feng Shui fears Holt Footbridge. Council accepts superstition. By Letitia Rowlands. Most engineers take safety, strength and symmetry into account when designing a bridge. Those at Fairfield City Council have been faced with an additional concern of bad Feng Shui. Plans for a $30,000 footbridge across the Clear Paddock Creek stormwater channel at St John's Park have been changed twice in recent weeks because of the superstitions of locals. At least 2 residents in Caulfield Crescent did not want the bridge in line with their front doors because it was considered bad luck under the principles of Feng Shui. Council officers eventually agreed to put the footbridge where it was originally situated. Councillor Maria Heggie said the debate began in April when an old footbridge across the stormwater channel was deemed unsafe and had to be removed. Quote, when the engineers were building the new bridge, they decided to move it to a position that would allow more convenient access to the road, end quote, Ms. Heggie said. Quote, but when one of the residents realized where the bridge was going to be, they contacted me and said it would be bad Feng Shui for their home. The engineers agreed to move it 5 meters to the side, but that upset another resident because of the Feng Shui for their house, end quote. Caulfield resident Ming Trung, with apologies if that's not pronounced correctly, said his family was one that objected to the bridge being built in front of their home. Quote, in our culture we have beliefs of Feng Shui, and for the bridge to be pointing to our front door is considered bad luck, end quote, said Mr. Trung, who lives in Caulfield Crescent with his parents and grandmother. Quote, we have an old woman in our home and it is very important for her, end quote. Council engineer Peter Forel said it was not the first time such beliefs had affected his work. Quote, a lot of our residents believe in Feng Shui principles, so it's something we have to consider in our work, end quote, he said. Quote, even if it doesn't occur to us instantly, once it's brought to our attention, it's not something we can ignore, end quote. But residents living on the other side of the channel said yesterday they were angry at not having been involved in discussion over the bridge's location. Quote, no one from the council told us why they kept changing the bridge's location, end quote. One neighbour who wished to be known as Carmen said, quote, all this talk about being bad luck is a load of crap. This makes me really cranky. My mother has lived here for more than 40 years. What about her beliefs? End quote. Neighbour Jenny said it was unfair of the council to keep residents in the dark and delay construction of the bridge. Quote, it all seems a bit ridiculous that this can happen because of something like Feng Shui, end quote, she said. Local Government Association President Peter Woods said cultural concerns such as feng shui should be taken into account by local councils. And there's another part here that says, what is feng shui? Pronounced as feng shui or feng shui, also known as Chinese geomancy, the art of positioning physical objects in environmental locations that stimulate wellness, wealth, and happiness, translates to wind and water. Where else it has been used? Star City Casino and its courtesy buses, Chinatown updates in 1999, refurbishment of Cabramatta Businesses District, One Tel head office. That little gem I have been keeping aside for over 20 years. I read it at the time and I thought that's worth keeping. I wonder if that bridge is still there to this day. I guess in a way this is sort of like a little trove segment going back through historical archives. And here's a sign I photographed on a storefront some years ago in the suburb of Newtown here in Sydney, from a business that no longer exists, I noticed. Immerse yourself in crystal light. Crystal bed light therapy. A crystal light bed session creates an opportunity to take time out, surrender mundane thoughts, and receive. It is a relaxing, rejuvenating, repairing, and rebalancing experience which can strengthen awareness, connection to the divine, and aid transformation. Goodness. Benefits. Let's read about the benefits of this crystal bed. Cleanses and opens chakras from negativity and energy blockages. Do you want to have your chakras opened? Sounds a little bit painful, doesn't it? Lifts your energy vibration while aligning the entire chakra system, presumably once they're opened. Stimulates and boosts immune system. Anti-aging brings a youthful glow and radiance. Improvements in all health conditions. That's a mighty big claim. Feeling deep relaxation and inner peace. Assists your overall spiritual, mental, and physical well-being. You know, if this really did work, as claimed, they would be everywhere. Crystal light. Immerse yourself in crystal light bed therapy. Maybe I should have given it a go and had my chakras opened. And here's something that I photographed at the Mind, Body, Spirit Festival many years ago. Mind, Body, and Spirit. How the human cells in the body are affected by the environment that surround them. How to avoid gastrointestinal illnesses and cancer. The idea of using kerosene as a cancer cure began in the early 1950s, when a 31-year-old Austrian woman by the name of Paula Ganner had been given 2 days to live by her doctors. She had metastasized cancer and colon paralysis after surgery. Remembering that in Eastern Europe kerosene had been used as a cure-all, she began ingesting a tablespoon each day. And 11 months later, she was alive and well and gave birth to a healthy boy. When her boy was 3, he contracted polio, and Paula cured it by using 1 teaspoon of kerosene daily for 8 days. After spreading the word about her amazing results using kerosene for health problems, she received 20,000 thank you letters with success stories. Good grief, I had forgotten about that one. Advising people to take kerosene. And just at random, here's a little clipping I had about numerology. Numerology. To work out your personal month, take your birth date. Example, August 17. Add all the digits. 8 plus 1 plus 7 equals 16. And reduce to a single digit. 1 plus 6 equals 7. Add this number to the current year. 7 plus 2 plus 0 plus 0 plus 7 equals 16. And reduce to a single digit. 1 plus 6 equals 7. Add 10, as October is the 10th month. Okay. 1 plus 0 plus 7 equals 8. and reduce to a single digit if required. This is your, you can just imagine somebody sitting there just making all this up just to fill in a column in a magazine. This is your personal month. To check, add all the numbers in a row. 8 plus 1 plus 7 plus 2 plus 0 plus 0 plus 7 plus 1 plus 0. 26 equals 26. And reduce to a single digit. 2 plus 6 equals 8. There we go, it's all true. Then it says NB. If your birthday, the year and the month add up to 11 or 22, this is your personal month rather than reducing to a single digit. I hope you all took notes. Now we know. Now we know. I have many little flyers here from various anti-vaxxers over the years. Freedom of choice, no jab, no pay, no way. And that's quite a lengthy flyer. Lots of photographs taken at Mind, Body, Spirit of various acupuncture points and things like that. Here's one from the days of those wristbands with holograms from the late 2000s. Works instantly, it says on the card. Embedded wearable holographic technology may help to increase balance, strength, flexibility, endurance, may help to reduce stress, jet lag, maybe I should wear one, motion sickness, fatigue and recovery, impact the body's overall state of health. They were everywhere in that era, those claims of holographic technology. In fact, I'm writing a story for the next issue of The Skeptic magazine, the journal from Australian skeptics, about all the claims of these holographic and other wristbands and similar products over the years. And there were quite a slew of them. I was amazed when I went through my archives to see how many of these devices were being sold in the day. And finally, here's an information flyer I picked up from the Newtown Community Chiropractic. I don't know if that business is still going or not. Vaccinations. Make an informed decision. Here, vaccination information that will allow you to truly make an informed decision for yourself about this very emotive issue. It is every person's right to choose what's best for themselves and their children, the right of free and informed choice. See the less publicized side of this important issue. Get a feel for the facts. Sunday, December the 4th, 1 p.m. Limited spaces available. Call us to register. Newtown Community Chiropractic. And that is a wash with red flags. First, it's chiropractic. And second, it uses the term informed decision or informed choice or things like that. See the less publicized side of this important issue. Yeah. And that's one thing we've noticed over the years, that many chiropractors, I don't know what the breakdown is, to be honest, but many chiropractors are certainly anti-vaxxers. Well, there you go. A real hodgepodge. Hodgepodge, is that the word? A real out-of-the-hat sort of mix-up of random clippings and snippings and articles and things I have collected over the years among the thousands of individual files I have regarding, items of interest to skeptics. So I encourage you all, if you're out and about and you see a sign advertising something quite frankly ludicrous, it doesn't hurt to take a photograph and keep it, because you never know when these things will come in handy. I quite often consult my own personal archives when I'm writing stories for The Skeptic magazine, for example, or researching stories for The Skeptic Zone. And having these items from the past is, frankly, invaluable.
This is Susan Gerbic, from Psychics Explained. That's the YouTube channel where we discuss and analyze in great depth all those people who say that they can speak to the dead, all those readings, how they look like they're actually communicating with people. Why do people fall for this? There's a reason. It's much more complicated than you would think. Come to my channel, watch our videos. We would love to have you become part of our conversation. Just visit us on YouTube at Psychics Explained or Psychic Sex Planed on YouTube.
Here's Maynard's spooky action at a distance.
Well, I'm just here with Melanie now at Skeptics in the Pub, and I know this is going to be a good interview because she's an American by her accent, and Americans can talk.
So far, you've said way more words than me.
Oh, well, but thinking is power. Have I got your website correctly?
Indeed, that's the right one.
Now, why did you come up with that one? It's a very positive, directional statement.
Thank you, I try.
Yeah.
The idea is, we've all heard knowledge is power, but there's just too much to know, and quite frankly, there's a lot of information out there. So the better question is, when you need information, can you find it, reliable knowledge, and use it to make better decisions? So thinking is power.
So if you're given facts that aren't correct, is that still knowledge or is it incorrect knowledge?
I would call that incorrect knowledge.
And people think they have knowledge when they don't.
Yeah, that's a real problem. Convincing someone who is wrong that they are wrong, especially if they're really confident that they're wrong, no. If they're really confident but they're wrong, it's very difficult.
So what sort of things have you got the most pushback from on your site? What sort of topics are the ones that are a bit hot button with people? I imagine there'd be medical things that people have personal experiences of, or maybe paranormal things that people know. That's what I saw.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So I have my stuff on my site, but then on Facebook I try to do something most days. And there's a couple of answers to your question. The first one is I've gotten a lot of pushback from Facebook itself in terms of when I post something, they can't tell the difference between misinformation and debunking misinformation. So I get put in jail a lot for...
Is that based on the topic? Like they say, you may be giving medical disinformation when in fact you're quoting someone else's medical disinformation.
Well, for example, last year at Halloween, I shared an image. It was Halloweeners. So they were black licorice flavored hot dogs.
Right, okay.
And I saw people sharing it on Facebook. Like, can you believe Americans eat this stuff?
Yeah.
So I shared it, and
we can't talk. We've got Vegemite here.
Oh, yeah. No, that's gross.
Yeah.
Sorry. Vegemite is disgusting. Is them fighting words here?
Yeah, no, go on. You're eating yeast. Fine. I'll just keep eating my tofu. Yeah.
No, I'll drink my yeast.
Yes. Oh, yes, that's true. Yeah.
So I shared this image I have an article on my site on how to fact check, and I've made a graphic on how to do so. So I used the image, and I shared my graphic with let's fact check this. So first, be skeptical. Question, is this true? And then laterally search. So I showed how to do that, and here is the Snopes article that shows that this has been an altered image. So I shared this, and about a week after Halloween, Facebook took the image down, the post down, and put me in jail for sharing misinformation, for sharing an altered image, which I thought was more than ironic considering they let that thing spread for like a month, and I used it as an opportunity to teach fact-checking.
And how did you get out of jail? Because the AI would have picked that up, and a real person probably wouldn't have been looking at that, would they?
Yeah, AI picked it up. I tried to, what's it called? You try to appeal?
Yes, you appealed.
Yeah, that landed on deaf ears.
Hey, by the way, if you get a copyright strike on, let's see now, Facebook, I've had 12 out of jails immediately. Because say, for example, I used Le Freak by Nile Rodgers to show the differences in two dancing styles to the same routine with 1970s East German dancers and Top of the Pops English dancers. And I used that. Clear copyright violation. It's his work. I shouldn't really be using it. And they go, well, you might have used this work. Write 20 words to say why you why you should use it, using one of the reasons given, or other, my favourite category for everything, other. And I then went on to do a 120-word rant about AI copyright, algorithms, the IP lawyers that probably aren't making any money out of this, and they're never going to make partner anyway, and that's why they're doing it. And I just wrote that in one long sentence, and within a minute it had released the copyright claim. And that's WEA. They're a big label.
Okay.
I don't know why. I think it's because I wrote so many words and the algorithm went, ugh. Or someone read it and went, yeah, I don't want to deal with this.
Okay, what I heard was a video that I really need to see. And also, they never let me do that. There was one time I was able to write my my appeal, and it was right when Facebook was getting their Supreme Court, their panel together of experts to evaluate the kinds of claims that they had deemed misinformation. So I submitted mine. They didn't accept it, but they did one very similar to mine. So this was like, I'm going to say early 2020. I was brand new. And at the time, there was a lot of talk of the big lie because of the election lie, right? And I shared how that was a common tactic used by certain, I don't know if the algorithms are going to flag me here, so I'm just going to say certain propagandists.
Right, yeah.
And they flagged me for promoting hate speech and extremists or something like that. So I wrote my thing up saying this is why I was doing this. Like, I'm not supporting these people here. I'm showing how dangerous it can be to use this tactic.
And do you think they even read it?
No, I don't. But they did take a case very similar to mine, and they overturned that decision. The Supreme Court theirs overturned it, but that didn't matter at all. So in the process, though, I racked up like 3 or 4 of these really stupid violations, and my site was going to be taken down.
Wow.
And I was lucky enough to have a colleague who has influence at Facebook, and I got to a person, and they wiped my slate clean. But the Halloweeners happened since then, and actually just last week they flagged me again for sharing. So Brian Dunning has the Skeptoid podcast,
yes.
And his Halloween episode he shared ghost stories, and so I shared my ghost story. And in my ghost story, not to give away the ending, but my ghost was the witch from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Oh.
So I shared the episode with an image of the witch from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Now, they did not flag me for copyright. They flagged me for sharing sensitive content that may harm people. So they took it down.
Right. So the image of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs could harm people. Is that because of the debate about the new casting of the new movie?
I think that's way above what they were doing.
Oh, okay, right, okay. Oh, yeah.
But so you asked about the kinds of pushback that I get.
Yeah.
The result of that is that I'm very careful about what I share. So them censoring science communication sites like mine effectively means that we self-censor.
Yes.
So there's a lot of misinformation that I don't cover directly because
just by mentioning it, your evaluation of it will get pulled down.
Yep, basically. Okay. So, but the misinformation that I have shared, the biggest pushback I get is probably homeopathy.
Oh, right. So people claiming it worked for them on a personal level?
Indeed, yeah.
So does anyone try and defend the fact that water has memory in any scientific way?
They'll usually say something to the effect of, well, just because you don't know how it works doesn't mean that it doesn't work. Or just because science hasn't figured it out yet doesn't mean... It's an appeal to ignorance, basically.
Right.
And when asked to provide evidence, sometimes they'll go... Somebody else in the comments said to someone who was promoting homeopathy, well, provide evidence. And so what they did was they went on Google Scholar and they typed in, controlled studies, homeopathy, and they pulled up it was a legitimate article, but it was scientists explaining to homeopaths how to actually use science to study homeopathy. It wasn't claiming that homeopathy worked. It's just that if you want your stuff to be taken seriously, here's how you might do it. Well, she didn't read any farther than the headline that that's what she wanted, and so she shared it with homeopathy is science-based, and then, that didn't go very far.
Oh, dear. But the only thing I would see with the thinking is power is that you're asking people to do something, and people are fundamentally lazy, and maybe the act of asking them to think could be a bit much sometimes.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I teach people how to think critically, but it's not enough to know how. You have to want to do it. And so, at least in class, I focus on the harm question. Like, what's the harm of not thinking critically? It's much easier in class. I often joke that my students are held captive for 4 months. Like, they have to listen to the whole message for 4 months, and it's through a process, like a systemic process of breaking things down and building it back up. In real life, people don't come in for 4 months and stay, so it is harder. But yeah, I tend to focus on non-triggering content, partly because of Facebook and partly because that's how the human brain works. If we're triggered, we don't listen. And then use humor as much as possible, and then try to gently prod that if you don't think critically, there could be harm to you. I mean, this is what it's really about, right? You being empowered to make better decisions for yourself so that you don't get fooled and harm yourself physically, or even, look, I'm cheap, so to me, wasting money is still harm.
That's true, because you could be using it on something valuable. What have the students brought to you that have been in your classes? Have they brought issues or things to you that you maybe missed and went, oh, that's an interesting one?
You know, they find corners of the internet I did not know existed. Yeah, that's true. Honestly, a lot of conspiracy theories. They find really interesting conspiracy theories.
Oh, look, I'm a big fan of Infinite Plane Radio. They're all about we live on an infinite plane. So it's a flat landscape, but it's infinite. So it's a flat landscape with no edge, just like our universe, as far as we know, doesn't really have an edge that we can discern. He thinks we live on a flat plane that has no edge.
And what exists on that plane?
Well, we're only one part of it, apparently. Look, I can't explain it. But I think it's beginning to start here. But where can people get you on the web?
Thinkingispower.com, and also follow me on Facebook and TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, social media at Thinking Powers.
Okay, thank you very much. I wish that Saunders would shut up. Thank you very much. Shut up, Saunders.
We have Lara Bennett, who's our secretary.
You've probably heard the saying, knowledge is power. While that's true, there's just too much to know. Plus, we carry access to nearly all of humanity's knowledge in our pockets. Unfortunately, there's also a lot of misinformation out there. Conspiracy theories, propaganda, pseudoscience, science denial, all of which are effective because they appeal to our biases and emotions. As Richard Feynman reminded us, no one can fool us like we can. Protecting yourself from misinformation requires better thinking. When you need reliable information, do you know where to find it and how to use it to make wise decisions? And importantly, are you aware of the thinking errors that might cause you to fall for misleading information? The bottom line is, knowledge is not enough. Thinking is power. I'm science educator and communicator Melanie Teresa King. Please visit thinkingispower.com to learn more about critical thinking, information literacy, and science literacy skills. Educators can find useful and engaging course materials and assignments for their students. And for a daily-ish dose of better thinking, follow Thinking is Power on X, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube.
Time once again to head back to those digital archives at Trove at trove.nla.gov.au, the repository of Australian media history, more or less, well, in print. Newspapers and magazines and publications of various kinds, which we regularly dive into. We trawl the trove for stories relating to skeptical topics going back centuries. It's so interesting and so informative to see what the press was saying about these topics all those years ago, and not so many years ago. And in the line of health claims, broadly, today we're going to look up references to miracle water. Surprised to see how many returns this search resulted in which it resulted. How many returns? I was surprised. And it's amazing how many of these claims revolve around Lourdes, the famous religious pilgrimage site, which is found in the south of France. And according to Wikipedia, Lourdes is situated in the Pyrenees. It's a market town. And the bit that interests us, in 1858, Lourdes rose to prominence in France and abroad due to the Marian apparitions, the apparent visitation by Mary, the mother of Jesus Christ, claimed to have been seen by a peasant girl, Bernadette Soubirous, I think that is pronounced, apologies if that's not quite correct, who was later canonized. Shortly thereafter, the city, which contains the sanctuary of Our Lady of Lourdes, became one of the world's most important sites of pilgrimage and religious tourism. And over the many decades since then, the place is really famous for mass pilgrimages of people who are afflicted with various ills, hoping for a miracle cure. I don't know if it's still going on today. I strongly suspect it is, but I've certainly seen archival video footage of hundreds, if not thousands of people there, many of whom are in wheelchairs or even beds, being wheeled to this place in a hope of a miracle. You can find more information about this at the Skeptics Dictionary online, which says in part, to its eternal discredit, the Roman Catholic Church investigated the claims for 4 years before approving devotion to Our Lady of the Lourdes. Since then, the Church has validated 67 miracles at Lourdes of the thousands that have been reported, and canonized the peasant girl. Her body, which is on display, is alleged to be incorruptible, but the face and hands, which look so lifelike, are made of wax. It is estimated that in recent years about 5 million pilgrims a year visit the shrine at Lourdes. Over the past 150 years, some 200 million people have made the pilgrimage. For those who care, that's a success rate of 0.0000335%, or 1 out of every 3 million. There's more information there, including of all the cures alleged to have occurred at Lourdes, however, none have involved dramatic, unambiguous events like growing back of a severed limb. In other words, to be blunt, there is no good evidence to suggest that going to Lourdes will cure you of anything, although I can imagine for the religiously inclined people, it would give you a good feeling, or a feeling of hope at least. And it's worth mentioning too that the people who care for these people, family members and so on, would get quite a benefit too by feeling or believing they are actually doing something proactive to help their stricken family members. Anyway, let's see what some references we can find to Lourdes, but other miracle water in the archives at Trove. And we start in the year 1939 in the Daily News from Perth, Western Australia, on the 1st of June of that year. Paralysis victim seeks miracle cure. Paris, Wednesday. Infantile paralysis, of course that's poliomyelitis, polio. Infantile paralysis victim Frederick B. Snight is continuing his immersions in the icy cold water at the famous grotto at Lourdes. Today, Snight received a telegram of benediction from Pope Pius XI, who expressed the hope that he would be cured and commending him for his faith. Snight, who was smitten with paralysis while in China over 2 years ago, made a special trip to Lourdes in the hope of obtaining a miracle cure at the world-famed grotto. 3 days ago, he made a sudden decision to immerse his body in the waters at the shrine of the Blessed Lady. This has been repeated each day since, despite the intense cold of the water, which is only 38 degrees, 6 degrees above freezing. And 38 degrees Fahrenheit is about 3.3 degrees Celsius. Nice and cold water. Despite the protests of his medical advisors, who accompanied Snight, and his parents from America for the cure, Snight insists on his daily immersion. He is carried to the water in a stretcher. The portable iron lung is removed, and his body is lowered into the icy cold spring. Snight can remain out of the iron lung for only 1 hour at a time, and this hour he remains in the water. So far, his faith has not been rewarded, but he intends to continue the treatment, especially now that the Pope has sent his blessing. Unless he can receive a miracle cure at the grotto, where thousands are said to have been cured, Snight will have to live another 5 years in the iron lung. And of course it just goes to remind us that miracle waters don't cure people or prevent illnesses. That's the realm of medical science. Here's another reference from the year 1950 on the 23rd of August, again in the Daily News from Perth, Western Australia. Cancer sufferer expects miracle cure from Lourdes pilgrimage. Sydney, Wednesday. Victorian cancer sufferer Basil Phelan, 35, whose case had been given up by doctors, returned by air today from a pilgrimage to Lourdes, still convinced that he will recover from the disease. Mr. Phelan said that he took part in the immersion ceremonies at Lourdes. Although he had derived a great spiritual benefit, there was no physical benefit yet. Still too weak to walk, he carried a bottle of Lourdes water in a basket as he was lifted from the aircraft. And I imagine that story, that similar story of people in various stages of cancer and other diseases heading over to Lourdes, deriving some spiritual benefit and then coming back uncured, is oft repeated, even to this day. Now let's go to the year 1952 on the 28th of September in the Daily Telegraph from Sydney, Australia. Eyebrows were raised at a miracle cure. Time, the weekly news magazine. Sickly little Gilbert Goddard, a grocer's assistant, did not impress his neighbours in Charmont, France, as the kind of man who might make a pilgrimage to the shrine of the Virgin at Lourdes. Twice married, once divorced, he had never been seen at Mass. Nonetheless, it looked to a lot of pious folk in Charmont last week as if Gilbert Goddard, a pilgrim to Lourdes, had been granted a miracle. 2 years ago, Goddard, driving a motorbike, was seriously injured when he bumped into a trailer full of pigs, driven by butcher Auguste Maigret. He promptly sued the butcher. After hearing medical advice, the court decided in Goddard's favour, and Maigret Insurance Company handed over £8,000. By then, Goddard seemed in a worse shape than ever. A plexiglass support swathed his injured spine, holding his neck and back rigid. His weight had dropped from 111 to 90 pounds. His legs and one hand seemed so paralysed that they could scarcely move. He was a pitiful sight as he hobbled along, supported by his faithful wife and a stout cane. At Lourdes, Goddard grimaced in pain as hospital attendants carried him on a stretcher to the healing spring in the grotto. They lowered him into the water. A few moments later, Goddard stood up. "I'm cured," he cried. "It's a miracle. You should be very thankful," said the attendant priest, Abbe Jensen. "But are you really cured?" To prove his point, the exuberant pilgrim hopped and skipped around the priest. 5 days later, his plexiglass support left behind at Lourdes, Gilbert Goddard was back in Charmont, the talk of the town. Why, ask a few sceptical citizens, should such grace have fallen on him when better folk had been bypassed? The clergy at Lourdes were non-committal. "The Church," said Abbe Jensen, "reserves absolutely its judgment on Mr. Goddard. A year from now, if he is still cured, we may know. Meanwhile, because of the circumstances of the case, we will be more prudent than ever." Last week, Gilbert Goddard was busy spending his insurance money on a new house, a new car, a new lawsuit against the newspaper Parisien Libraire, which called him a common crook. I wonder how much of this story is tongue-in-cheek. It's a strange story indeed. Now, a very brief report from the Daily Mail. Brisbane, Queensland, dated the 8th of July 1924. A cure at Lord's. Miracle not proven. Australian Cable Service. London, Monday. A young woman's claim that pliability of the fingers returned to an injured hand after bathing it in the waters at Lord's was searchingly investigated by 50 doctors at St John's Hospital, North London. Reverend Mr. Woodlock, register of the pilgrimage, who believed that the cure was miraculous, subsequently announced that the doctors had decided that the claim was not proven and agreed to a suggestion that further supposedly miraculous cures should be subjected to systematic investigation on the lines adopted in France. And I just can't help remembering that behind each of these stories are people full of hope. Now, for a change of tact, we have the Daily News again from Perth, 12th of September 1938. Miracle changed water to whiskey. Recently, a customs official on the Ulster, Ireland frontier stopped an old woman, asked her if she had anything to declare. The old woman protested volubly, and that word means talking fluently, readily, or incessantly, that by all the saints above, she hadn't. Noticing her clasping a bottle, the officer asked what it contained. "Only holy water straight from Lord's," she replied. Doubting, he pulled the cork, sniffed, scathingly announced the bottle contained whiskey. "Glory be!" cried the offender. "A miracle!" And now another short story, which is mostly it must be said, encapsulated by the photograph, which I'll try to explain now. This is in the Canberra Times, dated the 28th of February 1983. If you're interested, it's on page 4 under the title Miracle Well. And the photograph is basically a group of people, sort of taken from above, lined up with bottles in hand, queued up to hopefully get some of this water. And the caption reads, "People queued at the Kaltenbrunn well in West Germany on Saturday to obtain some of the water, which almost overnight has become known for performing miracles. The water is reputed to have cured many sufferers, including a blind boy and an old man bedridden with arthritis." And I'm reminded of the old truism, "Hope springs eternal." Sort of apt in this situation. And finally, from the Northern Star, from Lismore, New South Wales, on the 16th of December 1922. Miracle water. Fortune in puddles. There are fortunes in puddles. Many of the most noted health resorts in Europe owe their wealth and their prosperity to the fact that one day, somewhere in their midst, a puddle was found which eventually turned out to be a miracle spring. Then they were obscure villages. Now they are the rendezvous of kings and queens, writes Vera Hemmans in the London Daily Graphic. The discovery of such a spring usually necessitates the building of a railroad, the erection of houses and hotels, which of course bring increased population. In addition to the visitors who come to spas, or the benefit of their health, there is a good trade in medical waters. Bottles of it are sent all over the country every day, or it is evaporated to obtain the salts, which are part of the stock in trade of the druggist. A rugged, red-cheeked old man named George Murrell is the most talked-of man in Essex today. During a drought, he made himself a pot of tea with water from a puddle, which never appeared to dry up. It had a strange taste, which he attributed to old boots, tadpoles, and dead cats. But after a few days he began to feel younger, and he was convinced that the water had a health-giving effect. The best in England. The water was traced to a well, and a sample was sent to Dr. Radale, an analyst of Victoria Street, for investigation. He thinks that the medical water is as beneficial as that obtained on the continent, and that it resembles the water of Seidlitz.
If that discovery had been made in Germany,
Dr. Riedel said,
no time would have been lost in making a spa. There is no other medical water like this in England.
The miracle water is said to cure all ills: gout, rheumatism, dyspepsia, and skin diseases. And many people in the neighbourhood village of Vange, near Pitsea, have flocked to the well to secure bottles of this life-giving cure. It is the poor man's spa. It is interesting, while speaking of this discovery, to recall how the medicinal virtues of Cheltenham's waters were found in 1714. In a meadow, a small stream silently oozed from the earth and was observed to attract neighbouring pigeons, numbers of which congregated around that spot, exhibiting marked partiality for the water. The water flowed when other streams were frozen. The spring was examined and found to contain certain saline properties. The figure of a pigeon still marks the gate at the entrance of the old well. Will Vange, the place of the miracle water, be exploited by some enterprising syndicate, or will it remain the poor man's spa? I wonder if that is still a thing today. Let's have a look. Vange. And believe it or not, I've actually discovered a recent photograph of what appears to be ruins of the well in question. Miracle water was once sourced from the well. Well, there we go, just a smattering of the many, many hundreds of references to miracle water or miracle water cures or water turning into whiskey or whatever the case may be in the Trove archives. And of course, many of those returns relate to the claims made at Lourdes in France, which still go on today. But you too can find out about all sorts of wonderful miracles and water and whiskey, I guess, in the pages of Trove when you visit trove.nla.gov.au. Type in your search, and you never know what miracles you might find. Thank you for listening to The Skeptic Zone. Another one next week, the last one for 2023 next week. Now, as I said at the top of the show, if you're a teacher or you have young kids or, well, really for anybody, if you go to this week's show notes at skepticzone.tv, you'll discover a link to a calendar I've put together for next year. It's a calendar with origami, lots of origami pictures, and you can download that free just by following the show notes. And speaking of calendars, if you go to maynard.com.au, you can download your very own 2024 Maynard calendar. Maynard, the international goose. And what a colourful calendar it is. I'm just having a look at it now. There's even a great picture of Maynard with Weird Al Yankovic. Check it out at maynard.com.au. But for this week, this is Richard Saunders signing off from Sydney, Australia.
You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Please visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for episodes and show notes with links going back to 2008. You can follow the Skeptic Zone on Facebook, X, TikTok and YouTube by clicking the links at our homepage, together with links to support the show financially via Patreon or PayPal. The Skeptic Zone is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed by our guests are not necessarily those of the Skeptic Zone podcast or any other skeptical organisation.
"'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the land, skeptics were preparing to help folks understand that Christmas is a festival full of fun and surprise, but also a time for reflection, of being thoughtful and wise. Let children enjoy the stories and myths that appear to demonstrate magic, but magical thinking with science and health can lead to something tragic. We may have family gatherings or prefer to be by ourselves. We may walk around our neighbourhood admiring angels and elves. We can protect ourselves and others in crowded, hectic places, but staying home if we are sick, being vaccinated and not coughing in faces. And if we see a UFO, we can but nod and sigh. No green Martians are visiting, just reindeer in the sky. Ho, 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 Merry Christmas to skeptics far and wide. Have a wonderful holiday season.